Hello and welcome back from this slightly shorter lunch. I hope you are ready for the afternoon sessions. And now let's shift our attention to a very forward-looking topic. We are now starting the first session of this seminar about talent cities. And the topic is innovation, economic transition, and tech transformation. With ESPON MC member from Greece, Matilde Konstantinopoulou, I didn't say it right, sorry, who's an ESPON MC member from Greece and advisor for European Territorial Cooperation and the Ministry of Development and Investments, and she's going to be our moderator in this session. Please welcome her.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everybody. I hope you enjoyed your lunch, and I know that we are running out of time. We are 1 hour late, so I'm going to speed up. I'm not going to do any introductions. We are talking about talent cities now, the first session on talent cities, and all I have to say is what do we mean by talent cities? Acquiring talents, attracting talents, exploiting talents, keeping talents. Well, these are some issues that are going to be discussed later on now. And I'm going to invite the speakers that are here with us to join me here at the panel. Well, Alba Villamor has already taken her position. Thank you for speeding up the procedures. She's an economist and journalist. She has worked for 10 years for the international organizations in project management, and she's a civil servant since 2021 in the Spanish General Administration, dealing with the water resources, and now she's the head of unit of the DG General Directorate, fighting depopulation. Then I will call on the panel. Rodrigo Vargas, is he around here? Not yet. Okay, then I will call Heike then, my colleague from the monitoring committee representing Germany, Heike Hagedorn. She has a PhD in political science, and she masters European governance and public administration. She works for the Division of European Special Development Policy and Territorial Cohesion in the German Ministry of Housing, Urban Development and Building. And last but not least, here in presence, we have our General Secretary for Demographic Challenge. You've met him this morning, Francis Boya. He's still not here. Then I will not wait. We have online, and I will start from Alexia Ruby, Policy Coordinator at the European Commission's Directorate General for Agriculture and Rural Development. She's an agroeconomist, 20 years of experience and plus in European Network Coordination on Rural Policy Analysis. She's with the DG Agri since 2014. Within the unit, she coordinates teams for EU Rural Action Plan and the Rural Pact. And in her case, I think she's going to focus on rural innovation systems, ecosystems, and the economic and digital transition of the EU, the long-term vision of the Union for rural activities beyond the traditional ones. And that's the purpose of this session. We are going to talk about smart specialization, innovation, and tech transition. Not very common issues, not very common topics, not topics that cities, and especially small cities and medium-sized cities, are keen on. So we are trying also to identify synergies between urban and rural environment. Please, Alexia, the floor is yours. Well, the screen is yours.
My screen. Okay, so thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. I hope you hear me well. So I'm going to focus on rural innovation ecosystems and rural urban linkages.
We don't hear
from the point
the sound.
of view of the long-term vision
Alexia,
for the
please.
rural areas. Before moving
can't hear you yet.
to this substance, I wanted to recall what we are talking about when we talk about rural areas. We're talking about 83% of land and 30% of population. And when we talk about rural-urban linkages, it's very important to remind that not all rural areas are equal, and we have remote ones and ones that are closer to cities. The rural areas close to city, they represent around half of the land, of the rural land, and 2/3 of the population, but the remote areas also represent half of the land and 1/3 of the rural population, and they are less likely, or they are in a different situation when it comes to interacting with cities. So I'm speaking from the angle of the long-term vision for the EU's rural areas, which is a communication from the European Commission that was adopted in June 2021, following a debate launched by the President of the European Commission. So this vision brought together the aspirations of rural and urban people equally for rural areas to become stronger, connected, resilient, and prosperous by 2040. It's a long-term vision, as I said. And in the stronger component, you have all the aspects that are related to community empowerment, to access to services, but also to innovation, capacity to innovate and embrace the changes that are coming up and invent solutions to tackle them. This is an important one for today, and the block, under the connected block, you have a lot of recognition of the infrastructure, the connectivity, the digital connectivity, but also the physical connectivity, and there we have specific elements on urban-rural linkages. And of course, you can find such linkages in resilient and prosperous. I will go back to that as well. This vision comes with shared goals. I'm going to present them just afterwards. And 2 avenues are proposed to implement this vision. A rural action plan, which is a series of actions from all Commission departments to address the challenges and opportunities of rural areas, and the Rural Pact, which is recognizing that the Commission cannot do it alone, and we need to involve everybody, all the levels of governance, the stakeholders, in moving towards the shared goals together. So the shared goals, as I said, there are 10. They're here on the left, but there are 3 that are more relevant for our event today. The second says that rural areas should be engaged in multi-level governance, developing integrated strategies and benefiting from interdependencies between urban and rural areas. The goal 7 says that rural areas should fully benefit from digital innovation with equal access to emerging technologies. And goal 8 is about entrepreneurial, innovative, and skilled people co-creating technological, ecological, and social progress. So you can see that this economic innovation dimension is very strongly embedded in this vision. To develop the vision, we had 3 streams of work. One was public engagement activities, another was analytical work, and another was participatory foresight. Within the analytical work, we have a very big, we analyzed all sources of data, and there were several chapters, and in particular, there was one chapter on cooperation, innovation, and networks, and there was another chapter on integrated territorial development, and of course, others covering labor, education, so it was a very wide analysis. If we start with what we learned on rural innovation from analyzing the evidence available, is that first there is, or there was at the time, it's progressing, but limited literature and evidence on rural innovation. There's a lack of relevant indicators. The indicators that are used to qualify innovation are very often better suited for the urban types of innovation than for the rural types of innovation. And often we have these indicators only at NUTS2 level, so at a level where we cannot qualify rural. So this was really a gap. We have a real gap in data there, and it's interesting if ESPON can embrace this. We also highlighted a number of specificities of rural innovation, which is that innovation is sparkled more often by internal and external challenges, rather than by the knowledge creation in the area or the presence of multiple types of people in the area. That innovation tends to be more incremental. It's more about using ideas differently, repurposing, etc. Social innovation typically plays a greater role in rural areas. It's a lot about changing organizations and ways to interact and do things, business models, etc. And finally, and very importantly, cooperation and networking are essential. Within the area, between the people that are there, and between the area and other areas, other rural areas, and also other urban areas, to source the knowledge from a broader set of origins of people and of businesses than the ones that are present in the area, because this area is sparsely populated and has a lesser density of businesses. And also from other countries, we found evidence of networking between rural firms and other countries in international setting. So these were the specificities, and what we found out as well is that what really blocks innovation or hampers innovation in rural areas is weaker enabling conditions. We have lower education levels in general, lower capacity to invest in research and development because the firms are smaller, and we have lesser access to innovation support, to infrastructures, and the funding for cooperation, which is so essential, is often not enough for the needs. But we have also huge opportunities at the moment. Rural areas are central to the green transitions. They are where the natural resources are. Digitalization can provide also a way to shorten the distances and remove some of the obstacles. And finally, the social pressures that rural areas face, including the decline of services, for example, can trigger innovation because people react and try to find other ways to do things. And the influx of rural newcomers that we see in a number of rural areas as well, they can act as drivers of innovation. So this was what we saw. It's important also to look at the economy. There's often the impression that agriculture is the main activity in rural areas, and it's when we look at the share of employment in 2018 and the share of gross value added, we can see that it's still important, in particular in a number of member states. But when we look at the evolution of this dynamically in the last 20 years, we can see that the economy is clearly diversifying. So we need to approach rural innovation, rural economy, and the innovation ecosystems that are there to accompany these economies in a cross-sectoral fashion. So initiatives that we have seen that help places to meet and innovate jointly. All the initiatives around third places, fab labs, etc., are delivering very interesting results in rural areas. People are asking for one-stop shops for support, funding, advice. So places where they can have it all and they do not have to go and find for all the resources in different places. Innovation hubs, digital innovation hubs, for example, are interesting if they are locally anchored and accessible. And we have seen that cooperation is central, and so of course cooperation supports to enhance social capital, facilitate co-creation, facilitate collective projects, facilitate linkages to source knowledge from elsewhere. All this is very, very important for rural communities. So leader and community-led local development and smart villages are key types of initiatives that are embedded in our policy frameworks. The European Innovation Partnership for Agriculture is also a very interesting model that we are trying now in this new period to broaden to all the objectives of the Common Agricultural Policy, so also the rural vibrancy. There's also a lot of investments in Horizon Europe in multi-actor projects where you combine elements from different types of actors collaborating together and creating practical solutions, innovative solutions for the future. Rural-urban partnerships have been evidenced as well by several projects and initiatives as very important because you have potential to develop within an urban-rural relationship you have possibility to grasp the opportunities from proximity economy, circular economy, the green economy, partnerships around food. These can be very beneficial if they're handled in the right way, and this was demonstrated by the robust Horizon Europe Horizon 2020 projects that worked on rural-urban synergies. And cross-border cooperation is also important, and international cooperation as well. So these are the sorts of things in which we need to invest alongside, of course, the typical places that I have put in the top there that are bringing academia, entrepreneurs, and civil society and local governments together in places where this important coordination for innovation ecosystem can happen, also for the rural people. And so we need to consolidate this and all the enabling factors that are what hampers innovation to happen in rural areas, not the innovation spirit of people or businesses, because this is equal. So what are we doing about this very quickly under the rural vision? So in this EU Rural Action Plan that I mentioned, we have 30 actions, including 9 flagship initiatives. And we have several of these actions that are particularly interesting for our subject today. So first on the left here, you have the flagship Research and Innovation for Rural Communities. This is a flagship through which we target funding specific funding for rural innovation, research and innovation under the Horizon Europe project. We have invested over 120 million euros in the first 4 years. There's also a new initiative run by the Joint Research Center, which is called the European Startup Village Forum. And basically this looks at enhancing the startup-driven innovation in rural areas by understanding the specific conditions that rural startups face and the rural innovation ecosystems and how they can be run. And you can see here a screenshot of their report on startup village conceptualization. We continue our activities under EIP Agri with several focus groups. And of course, the smart specialization platforms, in particular the one on agri-food, is a place or was a place for interaction, which is important. There's also a flagship on rural digital futures, where we invest in the different components of digitalization, so the infrastructure, the broadband development, but also providing capacities to develop innovation, digital innovations with and for rural people and businesses, and enhancing the digital skills. And there's an interesting pilot on digital education for children in remote areas, for example. And then there's also a flagship run by DG Grow on entrepreneurship and social economy with networking activities around clusters and the cluster platform with dedicated calls, once again, for rural areas. So we're trying to bring this rural dimension there. And to finish and come back to rural-urban linkages, and this will be my last slide, we can see that these urban-rural linkages and also the innovation component of that can be developed within these linkages, they permeate the full blocks of the rural vision. We can see that they can be very favorable to stronger rural areas if the partnerships are developed with an equitable participation of rural people in the governance body of these partnerships. If we consider the needs of rural and urban on an equal footing. So this morning before lunch or at the moment when this session should have started, the representative from Soria there was discussions about territorial contracts, etc. So there needs to be real equity there, and including making local innovation ecosystems fit for all innovators. And that should apply to the smart specialization strategies as well, that they are built in a way that embraces the diversity of territories in the region and really takes into account the needs of all actors. Under the connected block, there are a lot of opportunities for innovation under mobility, where we really need this strong connection between urban and rural, and rethinking really the mobility systems. Digital services are an important field of innovation to connect rural and urban. And under resilience, we need to come up with new models as well to value ecosystem services that are provided by the rural areas to the whole of society. And under prosperous rural areas, part of the vision, there's a lot of needs for cross-sectoral synergies, local value chains, territorial policies that valorize really regional identities, including the rural part of it. So this is a bit maybe all over the place, but you can see that there is really a very big potential in rural areas that can be expressed through rural-urban linkages, and I hope that contributes to the thinking today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexia. Well, I was so stressed to start up and be quick that I forgot some things I wanted to tell you at the beginning. You will allow me. First of all, I would like to welcome to this panel Rodrigo and our General Secretary. Thank you very much for being here with us. And your input will be valuable in terms of policies and also in terms of case studies and on the ground, let's say on the field results. The format of this session is that we start with the two key speakers. We've heard Alexia, we will hear Alba soon. So they will put the general idea, the general framework of the importance of innovation, let's say, and smart specialization as a key factor determining long-term regional economic growth, concentrating on small and medium-sized cities, because as the speaker said this morning, territory is important. And the second part of our session will have 3 case studies. 3 speakers will present us case studies from Spain, Portugal, and Germany. And in the end, we will have some policy thoughts, some policy recommendations, some policy input by esteemed people that work at the national government or have a policy and politics background. Having said that, I would like to, before moving to Alba, I would like to ask a question to Alexia just to spirit up the discussion. She mentioned about the goals, sustainable development goals of the UN and goal 8 on economic and social dimension. Do we have Alexia with us? Otherwise, I can proceed with the next with the next speaker. Okay, never mind. I will ask in the end, maybe, in the end. Okay, Alba, the floor is yours. Yeah, you said it's better for you.
Well, thank you so much, Matilde. And before I start my presentation, that will be, of course, complemented by our General Secretary, I would like to take this space to publicly thank ESPON for this long journey that started a few months ago with the publication of Territorial Role and continue with the elaboration of the policy paper that have involved many experts that are also here and culminated in this event, in this seminar. So thank you so much for your support. And of course to our team in Madrid, and to everyone involved in this seminar, including the technicians and everyone who has been helping us during the day. So my presentation will be about the policies that are designed and promoted under our General Secretary for Demographic Challenge, and in the context of small and medium-sized cities in our country, and also in relation to urban depopulation. And as you might hear later also from our national experts, there are around 300 municipalities from 20 to 75,000 inhabitants that represent around 23% of the population, and they are distributed into 3 typologies of locations around the east and the southeast coast, around large cities, and also some of them are dispersed inland. It is important to highlight that during the last 2 decades, the accumulative trend is positive, but if we go to the new map here, you see that in purple, these are the areas, the territories that are losing population. And over the last 10 years, some of them have lost more than 25%. So in this context, we have tried to promote initiatives that settle the conditions related with prosperity and innovation to improve and facilitate the living conditions in all the Spanish territories and reduce these imbalances. Starting with the 130 measures plan that was developed in alignment with the National Strategy for Demographic Challenge, that was also designed, and it covers until the end of this year, with a budget that exceeds the 13 million euros, and more than 90% of the expenditure already mobilized. From the 10 axes, 2 of them are especially important in terms of the session that we will cover now. And though the first one, the ecological transition, has the highest weight in terms of allocation of resources, digital transition and the coverage of the full territory and innovation in the territory are aimed especially at supporting small and medium-sized enterprises in their mission of modernization and fully digitalization. And also, we have a mission from the General Secretary of Demographic Challenge of protecting and giving a special role in this mission to women and young people. So going to the second axis, digitalization, we know that innovation, according to some recent OECD studies, is related with the average age of people and also with the size of the company. And in rural areas in general, the average age is higher and the size of the enterprises is smaller. So in order to reduce this gap, we have worked in building capacity and infrastructure. And well, also, we know from the policy paper that has been released, we notice that these small and medium-sized cities, they are not, in terms of digital infrastructure, they are not behind compared to larger cities. But we do notice a symbolic difference in rural areas and those cities below 30,000 people. So in this sense, the National State of Telecommunication is launching a program called UNICOR program to cover all the territory by 2025 and ensure that we reach at least 100 megabytes of speed. And this infrastructure improvement has been complemented by the National Digital Skills Plan that has a target of at least having basic skills for 80% of the population. Among this target, our General Secretary is reinforcing capacity building by the target of training at least almost 400 people by 2025. And on top of this, there are specific sectoral digitalization programs aimed at improving key industries such as tourism, mobility, or education, among others. In order to, as a general target, improve the living conditions and try to reduce these digital gaps that we notice between the rural and urban world in order to generate opportunities for everyone in all the territories. And on the innovation side, our General Secretary has promoted a network of innovation centers. These innovation centers are designed to rethink the economic model, considering current and potential vulnerabilities in the territory, linked to not only some factors such as structural unemployment, which is not homogeneous in Spain, but also other related with climate change conditions, for instance, the projections of water scarcity and how it can influence the different economic sectors. This is an example of multi-level coordination where the different levels of public administrations are working together, including, for instance, the president of the Regional Council of Cuenca, who was here and who is also leading in one of these initiatives by opening a Center for Territorial Innovation in this city. And of course, in order to set the necessary conditions for this prosperity, the creation of networks is important, as Alexia Ruby said, to also create social innovation, which is a catalyzer of dynamic ecosystems. And of course, without forgetting that it is important in order to attract investment and enhance competitiveness, the continued reinforcement of capacity building. As you can see in this map, we have already 12 centers in place since last year. These are distributed along the territory, not only considering the functional areas that you can see in this map, but also other factors such as the risk of depopulation, among others. And we hope that we can keep working together and continue this work that will generate well-being in all the Spanish municipalities and rural areas. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Alba. Thank you very much. Okay, okay. I have a question for you. So, yeah, because it was very interesting what you said. You mentioned about your policy having 300,000, almost 400,000 people digitally educated by 2025. Which is quite a goal. But I was wondering whether you have made any targeted, let's say, analysis on whether some people are, how many people are in rural areas, who are targeted to be educated so that they will stay there, how many of them are already working in their territory and will remain there. So is it a plan, let's say, more focused on rural areas or having a territorial dimension, or is it a general plan for the country just to combat inequalities in the digital education field, let's say?
Thank you, Matilde, for your question. And I will try to answer, but I'm sure that my General Secretary will be able to complement my thoughts on this. But these almost 400,000 people will be trained, considering some factors in order to, again, reduce the imbalances in the territory. So it's completely aligned with our national strategy. And it will be distributed depending also on the size of the population. And the aim is not to, the main target will be those that are living in areas where the digital gap is higher and the risk of depopulation is also higher, especially women, and also consider other factors such as the index, the dependence in the age and so on. And the distribution of resources is also considering these factors. It will be distributed among all the 17 regions in Spain, considering some vulnerability factors associated with also the educational gaps.
Okay, thank you very much, Alba. Well, I think since we don't have Alexia online, I will keep some questions for the end. And I will move on to the second part of our session today. We've heard this morning about the support ESPON supplied to the Spanish presidency with policy papers and reports aiming to strengthen the role of small and medium-sized cities and towns and in achieving the active, inclusive, and functional territories. Within this context, we have some case studies that were elaborated, and we have the privilege to have with us from Mexico, if I'm not wrong, Joaquin Farinos, who is a professor of geography at the University of Valencia. He's president of the Interprofessional Spatial Planning Association, director of the Valencian Territorial Culture Chair, author of books and articles. I'm not going to go through his CV because it will end the whole session with saying what he has done. And in this case, please, Joaquin, we are looking forward to hearing your input on the case studies of Villena and Soria from Spain. Please, the floor is yours, the screen is yours, if you're with us. I hate digital things. I've been talking all this time for nothing, see? He's not here to listen to me. Me praising him? No. Alexia is here, but now I think I should keep her for the end. Ah, okay.
¿Hello? Unos resultados de nuestros casos de estudio, concretamente en dos
I'm going to
ciudades
discuss some of the
españolas,
results of some of our
Soria y Villena.
case studies, the
La
Villena and Soria.
presentación que les
The
comparto
presentation that I'm
la
going
he
to be sharing
organizado
with
en
you
tres
has been prepared
bloques,
and divided
dos
into
diapositivas
3
cada uno.
blocks, each of which has
El
2
primero son
slides.
las
The
condiciones
first
que podrían
block
promover la
is
innovación.
related to
El
the conditions fostering
segundo
innovation. The
bloque
second
pondrá
block would go in
compañeros
depth
como Alexia
into
Rubi,
the
Alba
topics
Cobo,
that
que
have been
tienen
mentioned
el
by
talento
colleagues
para
such as
trabajar
Alba,
fuera
for
del
instance,
territorio.
and
Y por
it is
último,
about
cuáles
how to retain
serían
talent in the
las
territory
políticas
and
que
what would
podrían
be
ser
the
puestas en
policies
marcha
that
para
could
los
be
territorios
implemented or that we have
teniendo un
realized
cierto
that
desempeño
have
en
a
estos casos de
certain
estudio.
development in our
Lo
case
primero
studies.
serían las
First of
condiciones
all, I would like
para
to
promover esa
discuss the
innovación
conditions
y
fostering
una de las
innovation.
cuestiones que salen
One
más
of the
evidentes es
things
que
that comes
el
out
aspecto
as
geográfico
more
de la
evident is that the
localización o las
geography,
condiciones
the
territoriales
location
son
aspects, or
determinantes
the
para los
territorial
casos de estudio
aspects
para
are
explicar su
key in both case
comportamiento.
studies in order to
Estar en una
understand the
determinada región
behavior. To
geográfica
be in a
pues
certain
tiene unas
geographic
cosas
location has
positivas y
certain positive
negativas.
aspects as
En
well as
realidad,
negative aspects.
básicamente en relación con la
Basically,
facilidad de
with
acceder a
regards to
grandes
the
centros más
access
dinámicos
to
como las
more
grandes
dynamic
ciudades o en
centers,
el
the
caso de
bigger
Soria,
cities in the case of
concretamente
Soria,
por
mainly this
tanto,
would refer
en
to
el caso
Madrid.
de
In the
Valladolid,
case
en el
of
caso de
Valladolid,
Villena, pues Valencia,
in the case
Alicante.
of
Es
Villena, it would
importante
be
resaltar
Valencia,
el
Alicante, or
distintivo carácter
also the coast.
digamos, del territorio en
It's
el
important also
por
to
variable
understand the
base sobre
character,
la cual y
the
ese es
local
el punto
character, which is
fundamental
the
para mi intervención.
basis for
Digamos que las
my
tradiciones y el
contribution
territorio es
here.
una base en la que poder
The
partir.
heritage
Seguramente esa
serves as a
tiene algunos
basis.
condicionantes que impiden
Clearly, there are
el desarrollo
sometimes
sostenible,
certain
pero también hay
conditions
significa
that
otros que
might
son
hinder the development, but they
necesarios para
could be
construir
a
nuevas
good
estrategias para la
basis
creación
to
inteligente,
develop
fundamentadas en los derechos
smart
potenciales.
development strategies based on
Entonces, el
that
capital territorial,
character
esos
from
recursos
the
territoriales, el
territory.
capital humano y
Also,
también
the
la
human
posibilidad de liderazgo
resource and the
han hecho
leadership
esa innovación social a la que
aspect
se ha
to
hecho
promote
referencia ha sido
the
muy
social
importante en algunos
innovation has
casos, como
been
por ejemplo
quite
en
important in
el de
several
Soria.
cases. For
Hay una
instance, in
cuestión que
the
está
case of
latente y
Soria,
es el tema
this
de
was
de
remarkable.
la
There's
apropiación
something
o
that
de la
is
forma en que el
underneath
territorio
it
es
all,
capaz
which
de gestionar
has to
y
do
de
with the
decidir sus
ownership
propios
and
futuros.
the capability
Se
of the
relaciona en
territories of
esencia de que
deciding
muchas
their
veces estas
own futures
innovaciones
looking
nacen desde
forward.
abajo,
We
pero
see that this innovation
tal vez
sometimes comes
tecnológica
from the
o
bottom up,
económicamente acaban
but
dependiendo
maybe
por acuerdos
technologically or
soberanios que
economically they
pasan de
depend
grandes
on
empresas
the
hacia
laws of
decisores
sovereignty
fuera del lugar,
uh,
¿no?
on
El
the to the
caso
hands of
particular es
certain
que se
big
está dando en
corporations.
España en estos
This is
momentos
happening,
en
for
las energías
instance,
renovables,
in terms of
pero me parece
renewable
como condición
energies. As a
necesaria esa
necessary condition, we
interconectividad
have
de la que
seen
ya se ha
the
hablado,
interconnectivity that
esa
has been already mentioned,
interconectividad
the
es tanto física como
interconnectivity
también de
that is both
proximidad telemática
physical
que
and
produzca,
digital,
que incremente las
that
posibilidades de
can
incrementar la productividad,
promote
la
or increase
competitividad
the possibilities
y
of
sobre todo hacer
increasing the
posible que en base a
competitiveness,
esas coaliciones
and that
pues las
allows
pequeñas ciudades puedan
for
tener
the smaller
alguna
cities to
opción
have
más
some
allá de lo que
options
su propio
beyond
tamaño
their
podría
what their
suponer.
size would have as imagined.
Entiendo que habría que plantearse una serie
I
de
think that we
condiciones
should
o de
take into
cambios
account
desde dos
certain
puntos de vista.
changes from
Desde el
two
punto de
different
vista de las
viewpoints. On the one
administraciones
hand, from the
públicas,
public
lo que serían el sector
administration,
o la economía privada y también
regarding
desde el
the
punto de vista de la
private
sociedad
sector
civil.
and the private economy, and also from
La
the civil
innovación debe
society
ser
perspective.
necesariamente templada en lo
Innovation needs
organizacional y en este sentido las
also
administraciones
to touch
públicas
on the
se enfrentan a
organization, and the
algunos
public
problemas que hemos
administrations
detectado en
are
cuanto a lo que
facing
serían
certain
algunas
issues
economías de escala, la
regarding
falta de
the scale
recursos y
economies or the lack
agilidad en
of
los procedimientos
resources or the lack of
para tratar
agility
de
in the
llegar
procedures in
a
order
tiempo y
to be
con
on
toda la calidad
time
necesaria
and
a lo
with
que
the right
serían los
quality
programas, los fondos y
to
las
the
propuestas
funds and the
de
existing
transformación
programs
productiva
for
y,
the
digamos, de mejora
productive
de las oportunidades en
transformation
los
and the
tres
improvement
espacios.
of the opportunities
Se
in
hace
those spaces.
patente en
It
los
is
casos
clear in
estudiados
those
la
cases that we
necesidad
have
de un
analyzed
soporte, de un
the need
apoyo
of a support of
técnico por parte de las diferentes
technical
administraciones
aid
o
from
diferentes
the
niveles para
different for the different
darle su
public
mejor
administrations in order to
resultado a los
provide
programas y
or
los
achieve
fondos
better
que se vienen
results with these
implementando
programs and
desde el punto de vista
for the
europeo,
funds
nacional o
that
regional o
are being
especialmente
used
en
at a
relación con la
national,
política de
regional
cohesión, las
level,
fuentes
especially
urbanas.
in terms of the
En cuanto al tema de la participación
policies.
ciudadana,
Regarding
se ha avanzado
the
bastante, yo creo, mucho en
citizenship
estos últimos años, muy deprisa,
participation, I
a
think this
veces no
has
de una
improved
forma
greatly in the
realmente
past
eficaz.
years,
De ahí la
sometimes not in a
diferenciación
very
entre lo que sería la
useful way. This is what we make a difference between the involvement and the commitment of the public. So what are the commitments of each of the actors towards the development of the initiatives and the local development initiatives that sometimes are very much close to sort of public leadership? However, we have seen that there are certain fora for the gathering of the public administration, private sector, and civil society representatives, both in the case of Villena and Soria. Regarding the challenges and the conditions related to the private sector, what we have seen very clearly is the company size. The SMEs in the experience a trend of the oligopolistic procedures or trends, and these go beyond the reach of the SMEs. And sometimes the initiatives that are created in the territory are actually absorbed, captured by these big companies that have their headquarters abroad. There's something else that is very much connected with the innovation topic, which is what productive sectors are the target of these local economies. To what extent these are mature sectors or that sectors that experience a strong demand. Something that is particular to the Spanish economy, as has been said before. There are traditional sectors such as in the shoe manufacturing or the restoration sector. There are other factors that influence. Now, how can we retain the talent? With innovation, the innovation needs to be either in traditional models or more alternative models, especially within the framework of this European New Green Deal. There are two trends, we could say, both the traditional and the new at the same time, but the more traditional one is the one that is prevailing from the local territory. We see that there are also other types of innovation that are more in line with the green and energy transition. For instance, certain ways of functioning that are more in the framework of the green and blue economies, which we have seen also, or in particular in the case of Soria. So what are the basic conditions for retaining talent? Some of them are very clear. They're more of the softer type. Culture is the first one, not so much the identity, but rather the mental models. The young people have a proper quality of life with interesting conditions in terms of the cities being kinder. The younger people want to look for further career options or more developed in other types of spaces. Although the bigger cities might be more hostile and they might find issues, there might be young people need training and capacity building so that they can enter the productive systems that need to be more diversified in order to offer them the proper personal development options. Some of the policies looking forward should take this into account. Concerning the soft conditions or qualitative conditions are important, but unfortunately they are not enough to retain people. We need other things. In the two cases, we have seen that these conditions are somewhat met or met to a certain level. For instance, the provision of basic services. It's usually mentioned the provision of such services for the elder people. And we see that this is not a critical aspect. However, there is an issue with the availability of housing for purchase or renting. And we see that there are two major challenges, connectivity being one of them, in particular, thinking in low carbon mobility, not so much by road, but rather by railway. And also with all the ITCs technologies, not so much with regards to the availability, because 5G connection in Spain is extremely good, and there are very little shadow areas. So I wouldn't talk about so much the availability of the infrastructures and the equipment, but rather the capability of using such connectivities. This availability of the use and the capacity of being able to really profit from this technology is very much connected with what Alexia would mention in her intervention related to the integration of certain development strategies and how companies can incorporate these technologies so that they can add to the performance of the whole of the region. So we need to combine the qualitative with the more material aspects, and the public administrations need to be the driver that can really facilitate the necessary conditions, economic conditions, to sustain the young people within the local economy, providing them opportunities for developing their careers locally. Regarding the initiative from the private sector, I believe that it is useful to promote the public-private partnerships, as we have seen in those two examples, through the local development agencies. There have been certain projects that are quite interesting from the perspective of having these public initiatives and these programs can have the private sector involved in order to make a better use of the public spaces and renew the cities. We have seen that there are some projects that are sort of an upwards type of spiral trend. Regarding the policies looking forward, we can say that the small is beautiful and possible. In this context, we saw that there was an initiative with a biomass that had led to the diversification of a specific company in terms of urban renewal projects or urban regeneration projects in Soria. And the company grew incredibly, but in the end, this became very attractive to the big power companies at a national or international level. The same thing has happened with the footwear industry. That means that we have very good industries, very good initiatives, but until when? How can we ensure that the local sovereignty regarding the local economy can serve as a driver? And how can we use those as a catalyst that is working at a local level, even in the international market, without being absorbed by the big corporations? Small enterprises have present a series of advantages. They are more flexible, they are more resilient, and this also translates in quantitative statistics in terms of the unemployment rate and the GDP. They have better results than the average of Spain. So we should bet on a defense of the small and medium-sized companies, the SMEs, and we have heard some comments from the commerce chambers and the local development centers in both in Soria and Villena. And I would think that there exist two opportunity spaces that are demanded by the population. The care sector opens a lot of opportunities for the future when we are in the face of an aging society, and the elderly will require more care. And it is a sort of social economy that is not well um, considered or has not been handled properly in a way that could sustain the local markets that would be connected not only with consumption but also with the production um, industry. They are sort of new initiatives, and that could be joined to this in the framework of the New Green Deal. We have also seen the valorization of the entrepreneurs initiatives. We have, for instance, the proposals made by an agency that is promoting the development of these innovative initiatives. So, for instance, El Hueco in Soria that has created a co-working space for small spin-offs that are starting their journey. And there's a lot of work being done by the Economic and Social Forum in Vienna as well. And beyond giving more value to the local companies and entrepreneurship, we see that there's a value in establishing relationships at different levels. We have seen that this has been very useful in Soria with the SDO, and also the promotion of the cultural industry in Vienna that is profiting from a network that goes beyond their specific actions, that goes to the national, regional and national levels. Regarding the connectivity, we believe that a better connection should be promoted. It should be cultural, and this has to do with the interrelations, with the connecting and nearby areas, and also with other spaces that might be further, but that share the same ideas. And to finish my participation here today, I would like to say that it is important to pay more attention to the smaller cities, not only those that have around 20,000 inhabitants, but even those who have 5 or 10,000 inhabitants. These spaces are very common around the national territory, and we see that they are very far from the influential areas and the metropolitan spaces. What matters here is not the size, as it has been said in some working sessions that we have had with the working teams. It's rather about the intermediation function of these cities. So in this aspect, size is not as important, and this is something that we need to have in mind when it comes to setting the threshold for the cities to have access to certain funds and programs. And this should be supported by this capacity building and technical support so that the initiatives do not fail beforehand. Also, it's very important to see an intermunicipal cooperation that the peoples that have participated in the survey have highlighted for the services delivery in the case of Soria, but also for the strategic projects, for instance, in Vienna. Soria, Vienna is a sort of cross-border city between Valencia and Castilla-La Mancha, and the possibility of establishing this dry port project that is able to carry the goods through the use of the railway towards the rest of Europe, all these goods coming to the port of Valencia, this would be very positive. And I think this project is actually underway in order to make the best use of the company's investments. the project is not only supported by the local inhabitants, but also the economic actors, some of them very well connected with the international market, and also with the support of other nearby cities and towns. We've been surprised by the fact that the local representatives and some associations, civil society association, and company associations demanded a better planning of the territory. They wanted a more strategic planning that was at a supra-municipal level.
Sorry, I don't know what happened. We can listen to you now, but I think it was interrupted because we exceeded the time. If you can still stay with us, because we may have some questions for you afterwards. I had one, but I'm not going to ask it. No, no way. I will pass directly to Rodrigo. Yeah. So he can give us some input, the case studies from Portugal, and Rodrigo is an urban architect. He's at the University of Lleida, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. He has developed studies of intermediate cities. He has experience in with the organization development with Angolan cities, urban territorial strategic planning, also working with the Resilience Global Program for UN Habitat. Please, Rodrigo. And please keep in time, otherwise I will lose my words. Yeah, of course.
Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. Well, first of all, I would like to thank ESPON for the invitation. I'm very grateful with you. And, well, I'm here representing a team. I'm just the front man today. And if you allow me, I prefer to make the presentation in Spanish because it's going to be more fluent, and I could take care of that nervous situation that I'm having right now. So let's get started. Do we have a... Okay. Gracias. Bien, ¿cómo se pasa esto aquí? Vale. A ver, durante el desarrollo del estudio,
During our study, the first thing that caught our attention when we analyzed the first data was the size of the municipalities of Portugal with regards of the size of the municipalities in Spain. If we compare both maps, the map on top is the one that fits the municipal division. In the lower map, we see a subdivision, a municipality subdivision that exists in Portugal, and that is called freguesia, which is has to do with the old parishes. And we see that there is a relationship between the location, the latitude of the regions that is connected with the land division due to historic reasons. What we saw is that the average size of the Portuguese municipality might be a competitive advantage compared to the size of the Spanish one, and as it's closer to the freguesias, the Portuguese freguesias idea, that is closer to the 30 square kilometers. I'm afraid this system is a bit whimsical. It doesn't work really well. The next slide, please. Following the criteria suggested by the General Secretariat of Demographic Challenge, when we established the size of the cities, the SMSTCs, up to 75,000 inhabitants, we saw that in Portugal we had 82 SMSTCs. We saw that there is a polarization between these SMSTCs. This is a situation that is more or less anecdotal, but at the same time is quite revealing. In 20 years, with the lapse of 20 years, Portugal has lost 12 cities within this group. Some of them have lost population, and they're all in the inner side of the country. The core towns that have left the group because they have more inhabitants than before are on the coastal area, or they're in the metropolitan areas or very close to the metropolitan areas. For us, this is a symptom that the metropolitan areas go beyond what the administrative limits tell us. So it is sort of an extension of this metropolization. Can you move on to the next slide, please?
Sí, ahí está bien. Bien, entonces, a ver, los primeros tres gráficos son gráficos de distribución de la variación de
The graphs in the population variation, we can see the average means, which are losing population on average, and the percentage variation is the same, which is still further away because smaller cities are losing more population than those that are larger. And then there is the determining factor of the lost population, which is what the three graphs correspond to. They are related to the density of population, so the lesser density, the greater favorable conditions for older people. Also, with the variation of percentage of the population, we have the aging index going up. And finally, and this is something that this is an information that came up from the data gathered, which is logical. As population ages, there is also an empty stock of living units, which may, to a certain extent, represent a niche for action, because this is a stock that is empty and that should be used, and we consider that right now it is being underused. And there is a graph also that is not included here, and the average aggregate house is relatively smaller than in the rest of the country, so there are many people living alone in distant, remote and dispersed areas. People who have difficulty accessing those areas there. Moving on. This is the distribution of the urban hotspots in Portugal, and we can observe the inner parts. They are usually nodes that overarch a functional area, but they do not have a fluent relationship. They are distant areas that cannot establish a network due to the distance. Save for these areas, which are those red spots that you can see. This is a study we performed of the funds per region. The location of the European funds are destined mainly, as we can see in the graphs, to supporting SMEs. Comparatively, there is 1/3 in the fund distribution. And when we move to small and medium-sized cities, we move on to other activities such as research, and then finally we have development. So there is a link between the economy in smaller cities, investigation, and research and training.
No, mira, a ver, vale, perfecto. A ver, el municipio de estudio, el caso de estudio fundado, está marcado en rojo, pertenece a la región central norte.
A study area belongs to the central area of Portugal, just behind the Estela mountain range.
Hola, hola. Hola, hola. Vale. Bien, bueno, vamos a estudiar este caso de estudio.
Okay, so let's have a look at this case study. Here there is a mountain range that isolates this part of the interior of Portugal from the coast. So they developed a communication system that's more fluid with the west of Spain, in the community of Castilla León and Extremadura. The sequence of municipalities, Guarda, Covillán, Fundão, and Castelo Branco, actually do work as a cooperation or network of towns as part of this area. And finally, Fundão, just to give you the geographic conditions, this half here, divided by the highway, corresponds to this mountainous area, which is not so populated. And there is another mountain range horizontally that divides the municipality into halves. So we have the concentration of population in the north plain and other areas in the South Plains. We have a look at the situation again of the connection network by road, how the train line avoids the mountains here, so they just go around it, and how these intermediate towns are disposed and laid out. And this is what I just explained, the regional conditions. And there is another point that I think is worth mentioning, and that's the allocation of the budget per inhabitant. Fundão has 1,300 euros per habitant per year, which is not really a bad budget for a town such as Fundão with 25,000 inhabitants. And then in terms of the distribution of the population, 13,000 is in the main hub, and the rest of them are dispersed in areas around it. In terms of the population, there is a key factor, that's this population pyramid. We have two pyramids here, one for Portugal in general and one relating to Fundão. So for Portugal, we have a base with certain stability, but also shows signs of aging. But in the case of Fundão, it is actually quite dramatic because from a rectangular pyramid, it goes to an inverted pyramid where the people over 65 has a number that's really worrying. And despite having certain compensation from the natural variation, so the balance between deaths and births due to the foreign population, we still see that this is not really quite significant. So we need a much larger number of population in order to revert this curve. We see that the employment rate has come down, although they say they still have a very complicated situation because they have 6% unemployment rate, something which in Spain is something that we would love to get to one day nationally. The documents we analyzed and studied in order to assess this case study go from regional territorial planning of this north-central area, and we escalate to the municipal and sectorial levels with human development strategies and even strategies for the development of local living and housing, for affordable housing. Out of those interviews we conducted, we had certain interesting findings, such as that comparison between the emptied Spain and the situation in Portugal, highlighting the main aspects and factors of both territories. This is something we have been talking about, and it is actually positive to reach the same result, but it is concerning to be aware that we are just as bad off in both countries with regard to small and medium-sized towns. We are talking about internationalization, multi-level activities, and the difficulties when it comes to setting territorial pacts and agreements, the need for greater competencies locally, communications and infrastructures, both physical and digital alike, as a key factor, and how those territorial nodes in small and medium-sized cities, how they act as a bridge between the rural and the urban. And then finally, just by way of summary of the Fundamental strategy, it is to promote the resources, regional networks, and internationalization. This strategy, the strategy of the intermunicipal community, we believe it is advantages to have this comparison between Spain and Portugal is that in Portugal, they have the intermunicipal levels of cooperation already established. They do not depend on the municipality's will. So rather, they have been created, and this planning for the Beiras and Cerrada Estrela region, where Fundao is located, is based on two main principles: inclusiveness and the commitment from the different local agents, both public and private institutions, etc., and the investment by networks and public-private partnerships. And there are two main cross-cutting axes: governance and territorial connectivity, and four main pillars reinforcing the attractiveness of small and medium-sized cities, the strategic positioning for innovation, the promotion of integration and inclusivity, and the consolidation of the sustainability policies. I'm just coming to an end, and the main challenges are fighting depopulation, implementing territorial innovation strategies, and to bring about economic transformation. Okay, one last minute to conclude. There are certain key objectives or goals we need to, or we aim to be inclusive. All these points are here, but it is just a repetition. We have been talking about things. If we want policies to be inclusive, if we want to improve infrastructures, both digital and physical, we are in the same situation. At least in the case of Fundao, they actually did achieve certain objectives or goals, such as, for instance, putting in a document the activities around agriculture. They actually managed to attract 150 million euros in private investment. They also could compete with Porto and Lisbon for the delocation of programmers outside of the main world programming nodes. So a city like Fundão is competing with big cities such as Lisbon and Porto. They created some sort of hubs with the necessary equipment. And in that regard, I think it is actually worth analyzing this case, not only because of the situation, because we're all fighting towards the same objectives, but because they actually did reach and obtain those objectives. And I think I just leave it there, and I'll give the floor to Paco. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodrigo. I want to remind you that you can use Slido to ask your questions to our speakers, and we will sum up in the end, and we will have some questions if time allows us. I will proceed directly to Stefan. He's going to present us a case study from Germany. He's a researcher at the European Policies Research Center at the University of Strathclyde. He specializes in research about territorial development policies in urban and rural areas. He has expertise in implementing EU cohesion policy ITI CLDs. He's a capacity building advisor on integrated territorial development also in the Western Balkans. And please, Stefan, if you can keep it under 10 minutes, you will prove that you're a German. Okay?
To positive German stereotypes. Let me try and share. First of all, apologies for not being in Cuenca. I'm sorry, that was wrong. I am in Scotland, so I'm happy to be still invited to present the German case, if I managed. I only have 6 slides really, so it should be hopefully not too long and I can stay within the time. I'm going to talk about Germany and then the case briefly of Oschersleben, a small town in eastern Germany. I'm not going to say too much about the small and medium-sized towns in Germany because I know that also Heike Hagedorn will later speak as well. I wanted to just show this brief map to give you an idea what do we mean by that. On this map you can see everything that is not green or dark red is a small and medium-sized town, whatever the definition exactly is. But we're talking about large parts of the territories. So this is not a small category of type of municipality. And you can also see that it depends pretty much on how in the German case, each region, each federal state defines what a small and medium, or defines its territories. And you can see patterns. You see areas where there's a lot of green, but in others there's a lot of red and orange. So something that also Rodrigo just said, that as in Portugal, where the size of the municipalities is quite large, this might make some rural areas into small towns that other places are classified as rural. A brief overview of the responses for small and medium-sized towns and cities in Germany, what is available. Germany has the advantage of having quite a substantial German urban development policy that has been going for over 50 years, with substantial funding, where both the federal level and the state level contribute to. The system has been reformed just a few years ago. It's now simpler. There used to be a wide range of tools, and it's implemented in a multi-level framework involving all the 16 federal states. There used to be some programs that were specific to small and medium-sized towns, for instance, one on intermunicipal cooperation and networks with quite a high number of projects. Most activities under the municipalities of all sizes. As a response, or one of the reasons to target, ways to target the small town specifically is the Small Town Academy, which has been launched in 2019, or its pilot phase has been launched. You can see there a map. So all the blue dots are small and medium-sized towns. There are over 2,000 of these. These are defined as between 5 and 20,000, which is a bit at the lower end of what we consider small and medium-sized towns. And currently, the actual contents and the formats is being concretized at the moment and what this means in practice. So it's about capacity building, there's an online platform, there's exchange between small and medium-sized towns, and there are also some specific projects with funding implemented across the different parts of Germany. What is important to highlight is that there's also the EU dimension for small and medium-sized towns in Germany, both EU cohesion policy, which is concentrated in a number of federal states. Overall, we have over 100 cities that participated or received EU funding. And here we can see that the majority of these actually fall into the category of small and medium-sized towns. So it's not so much funding that goes to the big cities, but to the small ones. At the same time, we need to also look at rural development, more specifically LEADER, because very often the small towns are small enough, so to say, to be still eligible for rural development funding. So we see the opportunities for small and medium-sized towns to operate at the intersection of the two policy areas. On my case study, Oschersleben, which you can see here on the map, it's in Eastern Germany in the land of Saxony-Anhalt, which is the federal state with the highest demographic issues, so the highest or the most negative demographic trends. And here on the smaller map, you can see Oschersleben itself in two different greens, and you can see one of the specific characteristics of the town is that it is quite large and incorporates all the lighter colored green territories which have been the result of municipal reform. So we have a core small town and quite a large rural area surrounding it, which altogether form the municipality. This creates a small town of just under 20,000 inhabitants, but it is quite relevant in the German planning system because it's classified as a middle order center, so it has to provide services for quite a large surrounding area. As I said, it's a large territory with many rural parts, and it has been seen quite negative demographic development since German reunification. So roughly a loss of 1/4 of the population since 1990. Over the last few years or so, though this has slowed down, there's still loss, but it's quite minimal at this stage. And also there wasn't really much policy response targeted to address this in the last 25 years, with big change in 2017 when the town developed its integrated development concept and identified two areas of action, focusing on brownfields, so on empty spaces within the territory of the city. Here on the map, you can see it's the old town in the south mainly, and in the north, a residential area from mostly GDR times. And this concept identifies a range of policies. So it already explicitly considers which policies to make use of, including both German domestic policy measures as well as EU funding. This led to a range of projects, but I want to highlight briefly 3 key projects which are targeted at improving the attractiveness not only for the inhabitants of the Oschersleben itself, but also of the surrounding area, including the surrounding villages that are part of the municipality, but even for the wider territory. The train station, the castle, and a disused department store. And all 3 have the interesting characteristic that the public sector became some kind of pioneer user or an anchor user that created the critical mass to make the structure viable. For instance, we have in the castle, we have public archives of the region that are now based in the castle and created some use for the castle. The department store became one of the offices or the headquarters of the municipal council, and the train station has a whole range of functions. Here, just to illustrate briefly, you see here the old train station area on the upper picture and how it looks. And the buildings at the back are, for instance, a youth center, a swimming pool, and other facilities. Overall, the findings, which are structured briefly into 2 types: findings for the national perspective and also for the case studies, for the case study itself. We can say that there is a wide range of measures that small and medium-sized towns and cities can use. These are offered by the European level, the EU, but also the national level and the regional level. And I underlined here the national one because this is the key source of funding. These policies do not have to be explicitly urban. It's important to look beyond that, and that's what we've seen when we look at German cities, look at regional development policy more widely, both the German regional policy, but also EU cohesion policy. And as I said already, the rural development policy, for instance, LEADER, where this is possible, where the small town is, so to say, small enough to be eligible for these kinds of interventions. As I said, most of the urban measures are eligible or are targeted at all kinds of cities and towns, and this can be a challenge for small and medium-sized towns to participate. We have, in the case of Forschersleben, we have only 2 people working in the urban development department, and it might be difficult to compete with other larger municipalities that have the capacities and manpower to actually develop proposals, etc. As a response, we saw the Small Town Academy, one of the responses implemented by the federal government to increase the capacity, so to allow these towns to participate in the policy process. Looking at Oschersleben, I selected it also because it is it has relatively unfavorable conditions. There was nothing special about Oschersleben, and I quote one of the interviewees who said, "Why us? We have nothing." And I think this is maybe a bit exaggerated, but I think I found this interesting because it shows we have an example where a town without anything really remarkable can develop positively and do so without being, for instance, the base of a major global leading employer or being a UNESCO World Heritage or similar. Key success factors, just 3 to highlight, to make multifunctional infrastructures where the physical construction is already linked to appropriate functions. This is the case for all 3 key projects that are highlighted in the report, that the public sector can be an important player, not just by organizing the policy process and the funding and implementing the project, but also to become a user of this, creating critical mass, and to make use of the full range of schemes that are available, use both EU and domestic, and then where possible, combine them. And this is something that we have seen, for instance, in the train station area. I was very quick, and I can tell you more, but I know time is precious. It's precious at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You impressed me. 8 minutes and some seconds. Congratulations. Okay, so we've finished with the part of the scientific, let's say, input and the reality, the input from the state and the reality and the government. And we are moving forward to policy reflections. I will give the floor to Heike Hagedorn. She has a PhD in political science, a master in European governance and public administration. She worked at the Division of European Special Development Policy and Territorial Cohesion in the German Ministry of Housing, Urban Development and Building. And Heike, now that we are going to talk about policy reflections, I have picked up some words from the speakers before. So I think these could give you some input and help us with wrapping up this session. Alexia mentioned the lack of indicators. Then we heard Timo speaking about multi-level governance and issues of how ITIs and CLLDs could function in the urban and rural linkages. I didn't have the chance to ask Rodrigo, apart from intermunicipal strategies, if in the case of Spain and Portugal, since you have a long-lasting collaboration, what about cross-border strategies that would help talent cities, let's say? And now I also noted down from Stefan the issue of increasing capacities and by helping towns participating to the policy processes. So if we wrap all these up, what would you say in the case of talent cities and in the case of using innovation and smart specialization to promote to retain population in rural areas, strengthen urban-rural linkages, and promote talent cities? Please.
Thanks a lot. I think if I answer all these questions, you won't get dinner tonight. So I will focus on just, I would like to present 2 very concrete examples from Germany. I think it's worthwhile to look at them. But before that, I would like to ask the technicians, los técnicos, detrás están aquí. I need some luces. I need some lights in the room. Is it possible to turn on the lights? On. I want to see everybody, just for a second. Just make it in the room, is it possible? En la sala. ¿Pueden encender las luces en la sala? Necesitan un momento. Okay, because I have 2 questions, or 3 questions for you. The first one is, those who live in a small or medium-sized city, which means in our German definition up to 100,000 inhabitants, could you be so kind and just stand up for a moment? Just stand up, I can see who is living in a small or medium-sized city. Has grown up in a small, or is living now, or has lived. Okay, well, that's almost half the group. So that's like in Germany, 50% of the population. Stand up, stay up. I have 3 questions. So it's like in Germany, half of the population is living in small or medium-sized cities. And I would like those who live in a medium-sized city, no, let's put it the other way. Those who live in a small town up to 20,000, just stay up, and the others you can sit down. So up to 20,000 inhabitants, can you still stay up? And those medium cities, just sit down. Okay, so it's about 1/3, I would say. We have the same figures in Germany. 1/3 of the people live in small towns up to 20,000 inhabitants. And now my last question, who of you like to live in a small town? Just stay up, and those who don't like it or hate it, just sit down. Okay, so it seems people like to live in small and medium-sized cities. Thanks a lot. Take a seat. Thanks to you. I'm going to focus on small towns with the 2 examples I want to give. So I think Stefan, he already gave you some figures about small towns in Germany. It's really a big group. Is this working for the slides? Do you know? Yeah. So you see it's a big group. The red, you don't have to read all the details, but the red color is for small towns. You see it's quite a big part concerning the numbers and the area in Germany. It's almost half of the area populated, there are small towns in Germany. Despite this is quite a substantial group, it's not really visible in politics, I would say. This is one of the reasons why we invented the Small Town Academy. You have already heard about it by Stefan, who just mentioned it. And but before I come to the Small Town Academy, I think it's important to distinguish 2 basic types of small towns. One is the metropolitan areas. We have heard about it already in the morning, which are close to bigger centers. And in these areas in Germany, we have a plus of 20% of inhabitants during the last 30 years. So it's really raising. And they have the problem of housing, schooling. They have different problems than the other type of small cities that are rural and peripheral. And there we have a loss of population of 20%, around 20%. We've heard about other examples in Spain and Portugal, where it's the same problems. But in Germany, this trend slowed down during the last 10 years. So it's not going down anymore this strong, but it's stabilizing on a certain level. So coming to this, we already had this map. You see small and medium-sized towns are all over Germany. You can see the corridor along the Rhine, which is on the western part. And in the south, of course, you have also small cities. And this Small Town Academy was invented in the year 2019, or set up in the year 2019. It has one slogan, which is urban development by, with, and for small towns. This is not very fancy as idea, but it's very effective because they work on eye level, so the acceptance is very high. So we speak about peer counseling most of the time. Small towns counsel other small towns. They have comparable challenges and potentials, and they develop very concrete and pragmatic solutions. So the Academy is a platform. It's not a building. It's not a building in stone. It's a platform, a network. At the moment, they're looking for a place for the Secretariat. They launched a call for that. But it's more meeting, working wherever it's necessary. They have, of course, some money from the government to do their work, and small cities can apply for it. If they have a good idea, they have to have at least 4 small cities, a network of small towns, to apply for it. And this academy supports whatever they want to do. They develop formats for them and they evaluate if it's an effective format or not. So they try to be helpful. And it's very consequent that this academy was developed by small towns, for small towns. It wasn't, the federal government just did a little bit of giving the space to them. So how does this academy work? They have developed different formats. I'm going to just give a rough overview. They have local and regional workshops they have done. They have the nationwide secretariat, and they can have nationwide conferences. They've developed digital tools, also enforced by the corona pandemic. And sometimes they are having exhibitions in the regions when it's necessary. What they don't have yet is a European dimension. And this is something we are open to do. If you have some ideas or interest, we are really open to have a European module to it. And I could imagine, for example, a European solution lab or something to do an event on European level from small towns for small towns. And just to give you some ideas how they work, I chose three examples of this academy, the pilot models that already took place. The first one is about co-working spaces in rural areas. And so there were 4 cities who came together and just thought, what can we do? How can we make it more attractive? And these, of course, these small towns don't have to be in the same region. They came from all over Germany. And they used surveys of citizens and commuters. They did a project week. And what I really liked, they did city walks with students. So they walked around and exchanged ideas. And some of them, they matched mayors. I think that's also very nice to have tandems for mayors. So if they have a special problem, they can meet another mayor who has maybe already a solution for it. And they can work on really concrete solutions. Often they have financial questions. How can they finance their projects? So it seems to be very helpful. A second example from this pilot models I would like to share with you is the Alliance of Historical Towns, as we are in Cuenca, which is a historical town. It might be a good example. In these historical city centers, they have the promise of a donut effect. And here I come to this wonderful dinosaur here, because I thought, how can I link our seminar to the dinosaur museum? And I found it finally. A donut effect is like what you see there in the middle. The middle is empty and deserted in historical city centers. And they try to work on solutions how to reactivate the city center with a special problem of historical buildings, which cannot be rebuilt or which cannot be modified as maybe they might be used. And so, but they develop concepts and try to find ways to make it attractive for living and for commercial, for enterprises. And the last example I would like to share with you, I really like the title. It's Small Towns, Great Diversity and a Bright Future. So very positive. And there they had these solution labs where young people from all over Germany were invited to come to these towns and to develop creative strategies together. And one side effect was that these young people who had sometimes some prejudices about small towns, they could revise them. And for example, they produced a film by children, for children, and which was done by children. They built a pavilion in the middle of the city center where older and younger people can meet. And they did a competition entitled Summer in the Small City. So instead of Summer in the City, and the citizens were invited to contribute creative ideas to the development of the city center. And those ideas who won, they got the prize money to realize these ideas. So it was very concrete and gave a good atmosphere to the whole city. So this was about the Small City Academy. Now I come to the hidden champions, to the second example I would like to present. And here you see some names of hidden champions. Hidden champions are small and medium-sized economies, normally family-driven, and they are world leaders. And I don't know if you have ever heard of them. I just took out 10 of them. So we have 500 of, we have almost 1,700 of them, and 500 of them are in small towns, speaking of really small towns. And I don't know, you've probably never heard of them, but you use them every day, I guess. For example, well, the first one is office chairs, Interstuhl. One is, which is this Zöllner. It's the fifth one. They produce vehicles or cars that collect waste. They have this hydraulic system, and so I'm sure you have seen them on the street, and they produce it for all over the world. TeamViewer, you might have heard, it's a software you can put on the computer. So this is really a good example of economic development in small and medium-sized cities. And of course, these cities, they really have benefit from these world leaders. They are above average economic growth, they have high employment, they have a high level of innovation. So I would like to stop with this very optimistic view on small towns, and thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Heike, for this interesting example. I didn't know about this small town academy, really interesting. And now I'm going to move to the Secretary General. And please, we've listened to your input this morning. Please, you can help me wrap up this session with your valuable experience and your insight. Thanks.
Muchas gracias. Agradecer todas las aportaciones que se han hecho hasta ahora.
Your contributions. I think that the examples that have been given and studied in different cities have been very insightful. Also, in the case of Germany, of course, and the suggestion that has been launched at us to participate in that academy is very appealing. So we would like to say that we have a will to participate. I think it's a very smart way of proceeding. I would also like to discuss something that is important and that we haven't touched on, which is understanding the context under which we are understanding or promoting the resilience of the social and economic contexts of these cities. We are going through very important changes at the moment. Our goals, our ambitions cannot be only increasing the production levels, because this goes directly against sustainable models that will not allow us to increase production. We are also at the time of technological revolution with the emergence of artificial intelligence. This will entail deep changes in the employment market, in the labor market, and this might have a very strong impact in the mid-sized cities. And we're also in the midst of a demographic revolution. Our societies have a longer life expectancy. Societies will be needing the arrival of the push and the boost in terms of demography that can be only brought by immigration. Therefore, we would need to build cities and societies that are much more inclusive. This is a very big challenge for us. If we are talking about innovation, there's a part of innovation that needs to be understood as an adaptive innovation that is capable of responding to a whole spectrum of realities that are very varied, that at the same time needs to include the medium-sized cities with their different contexts. We have seen the cases of Germany with very inspiring examples, but this is not the case of the cities in the interior of Spain that are of this medium sized. There are certain cities that tend to be more thematic or specialized in the field of tourism or services, which is what we see happening in the coastal areas and cities. In this case, innovation should help us solve some issues that are very much related to social aspects and with aspects that have to do with opportunities. The approach to this innovation is crucial for these mid-sized cities to be able to articulate that space. The mayor of Soria was talking about this 30-minute perimeter, which gives us the idea of a functional area, more rural areas, but don't really have an idea of the space we want to have and the specific territory that Jose Maria was mentioning this morning needs to be articulated around very tangible elements that are very grounded, that have to do with the reality of specific services that all these areas share, and within a process of innovation that also profits from the endogenous elements that cannot be moved elsewhere and that can be able of attracting and retaining the talent within the area due to the singularity of the element itself. There's something else that has been mentioned here before, and Alba has touched on it. We are working on the idea of the network of innovation centers, but beyond this network, that is a tool, a mechanism that can help us move forward in going further in innovation and having innovation reach the rural areas. We need to develop networks that are not flat. We need networks that are three-dimensional, that have, for instance, local policies elements. For instance, the academy would be one of the elements in this sort of network. We need also the cooperation of excellence centers and the possibility of having a network with all the resources so that the rural areas and the medium-sized cities can profit from them is paramount in our opinion. And this is from where the innovation centers can be born. We need territories that have a sort of antenna that is so powerful that can attract the resources that will be able to help them in their developing process. We are seeing an experience that I think is worth mentioning, which has to do with working in two dimensions towards economy. We are at a time where economy is being uberized. The big platforms generate this platform economy that sometimes is very difficult to handle from the small sized centers. So it's important to bring on board the big corporations so that they understand that their territories are not merely for extractive purposes, but that they need to commit to those territories. Sometimes these big corporations are the ones that are profiting directly from the territory because they are exploiting and using the resources in the region. Also, I believe it's very important at this moment, this turning point in which we find ourselves at the moment with regards of the economies and the needs that we are being imposed on the one hand from the very need of having the sustainability aspect included in the economy, but also on the other hand from the technological pressures that we are going through, we need to resize and have a new outlook on the public economy. There was a time where that economy that was public-based, public-driven, was somewhat stigmatized. Nowadays, I think we need to go back to those principles because many territories require a public economy in order to value and give value to their resources and also to put those resources to the service of a greater good, to the whole of the society. I'm thinking of bioeconomy models that are unavoidable if we want to sustain forests, for instance. I would end up by saying that we need to build on the mid-sized cities, but especially on the territory as a whole, a new narrative. This might contradict reality that is the economy of the big cities. The new narrative related to the new rurality connected to these mid-sized cities is something that I define as the 3R solution in Spanish. We need to rethink that the way that we are doing here today, this rethinking, we also need to redo the processes adapted to the new dynamics so that these areas can create new synergies so that they become more dynamic and they can save the space within the digital economy and also to provide services, generating opportunities. And at the same time, we need to acknowledge that we need to open a new process in order to re-inhabit these territories. We need to generate those flows of people that are capable and ready to inhabit the territories that for whatever reason, sometimes historic reasons, due to the weakness of the economy or their economic models, are now sort of forgotten and doomed. I think that Spain and Alba has mentioned some of the tools that we're using. We can talk about the rural field. We are in the second edition of this project, and this has allowed us to bring students to municipalities that have less than 5,000 inhabitants. And we are going to enhance this idea because we see that the young people are interested in the rural spaces and there are certain elements that are really attractive for them. So we would be very grateful if you had any suggestions for us, and we would love to join in any initiative that might improve the journey of the policies related to small and medium-sized cities in Europe.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, Secretary General. I think, well, the Secretary General has helped me to wrap up. He made very nice comments and very acute statements regarding the rural areas. I have noted only one, which is, I think, well, gathers all that we need to attract talent and keep talent in the rural areas. And also we need networks of 3 dimensions that will help towards this direction. Thank you very much for your presentations, for your inputs. I don't know whether we have any questions on Slido. No, I think everybody is tired. Or any questions from the audience here? No. Okay. Ah, okay. Okay. I don't know. I will try to see if there is a question or if someone of the of our speakers here would like to cross-border. I think we're going to discuss cross-border functions and relations tomorrow morning. Sorry? Yeah, these are from this morning. Can we go up? Yeah, I think there is no question for this session. Maybe the first one for Alexia, but I don't know if she's online. Okay, okay. Thank you very much. Then I won't keep you anymore. I want to thank all our speakers for their participation. I want to invite you all for the coffee break, and if possible, to have it less than half an hour, a quarter of an hour.
Yeah, I want to share with you 4 important things before we leave for the break. The first one is that we're going to shorten the break to 15 minutes, so please be back at 25 past 5. The second thing is that please sign the attendance list, which is outside of the room if you haven't done so already. The second thing is that the gala dinner is today at 8:30 p.m. at the Parador here in Cuenca, so 8:30 p.m. at the Parador. And then the last thing is that there's going to be like a shuttle service available when this day, the seminar today ends, for those of you who need like a return trip if you require it. And that's it. Enjoy the break.